translation has really transformed my poetry translation practice. I do think about, like, it's given me, perhaps made it more methodological, because just having another person to kind of go back and forth with over your drafts really forces you to perhaps, or has forced me to really think, to really reflect on my techniques, my methods. And then, you know, Kayvan and I have different approaches as well. So perhaps it'd be good just to begin with an actual poem read by Kayvan, and I could read the English, and then we can sort of go into maybe a more free-flowing conversation. And we'll definitely keep this to just under an hour, just so we have enough time for the other two poems. So let's see, Kayvan. So I think we assigned I asked you to, I suggested the 2 weeks poem with long title, and then the My Scent, very short, and what was the third? Onion. Yeah. And so then there are a couple of other poems, Kayvan, we may kind of weave into this conversation. But Kayvan, do you have any preferences on which to begin, or?
No. So
okay. Perhaps the My Scent one.
My Scent, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So sorry, and I hope you can. We have the table of contents, and everyone. So I gave the PDF you should have on your online. Actually, we have. Yeah, I'll be looking at the book though, so hopefully we can figure out the pages. And they're a bit strange because of the Persian, the nature of the directionality of the text. Oh, great. I think just everyone's here. Yeah. Okay. So Kayvan, so can you help me with the page number? I think I put the page number.
65.
65. Yeah. So shout out if you have any issues finding the poems we're talking about, let me know, or let us know so we can fix that. 65?
65. Yeah. 65
okay.
and 66.
Yeah. The pages are backwards. Okay. 65. Great. Okay. Oh yeah, this is the one with the picture. Right.
Sure.
Actually, can we just say what that is? You want to describe that image that we added? This is an example of paratext that came up, I think with the whatchamacallit, Scott, Squires, with the Squires book. It's something I myself am like really, perhaps our discussions are encouraging me to be more creative, not just in my translations, but in my paratextual, what I introduce paratextually into the published work. So this is just one small example. I think we could have done more, and perhaps we'll do more paratext, but this image that we used, which, you know, we thought that it would accentuate the poem. Just want to briefly say what that is, Kayvan?
This is just briefly. This is just a tombstone in Bakhtiari tribes in Iran, in central Iran. So these stone layers are used as tombstones. So when not for everybody, but I think that when a young man dies, they erect one of these tombstones on his grave. Yeah.
So something to think about. The reason why I'm going into this is just from a kind of methodological perspective. There was a lot going on in this very short poem, and I'm not saying we did we dealt with it perfectly. You know, happy to tell us that we didn't. But so our strategy was to put a picture of that would kind of hopefully help a little bit, and then we did use footnotes at the bottom. Whether for better or worse is, I guess, for you to decide. But yeah. Do you want to? Or I'll read the English perhaps first, and then you can read the Persian.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. My Scent.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'll start. So 66 of the book itself.
Sure.
My scent that doesn't pass. Be my metaphor in this inscription. My scent that doesn't pass. My gaze at the grass that makes a metaphor. There you sit atop a stone lion. The lion gazes calmly at the hill below. Persian.
بوی من که نمی آید در این گنجنامه استعاره من باش بوی من که نمی آید نظاره من به علف که استعاره می شود آنجا تو بر سر شیری سنگین نشسته‌ای و شیر که پایین نگاه می کند به تپه‌ای آرام.
Awesome. Yeah, one thing I know you have things to say about that, but I tend to forget my thoughts. So I'll just say one thing I noticed looking at this time is the question of punctuation. So it's interesting that Elahi, the Persian, has a semicolon, which, Kayvan, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's not so common. I mean, is this standard punctuation for poetry?
Yeah, this is a standard punctuation, but you know, generally punctuation is very modern in Iran. So perhaps there is no agreed upon protocol, just how to
It's a bit arbitrary, right? Yeah. So just to point out, we changed that, but yeah. Okay, Kayvan.
Yeah, I can remember. I think that it's perhaps just a memory of what happened when we were working on this, and which for me revealed a lot about this poetry because this poem because you asked me something when we were working on this, and it was very interesting at the in the end of the poem, exactly in the last line. In Farsi, it is batape aram. Okay, just if I have to translate the last two lines of Persian text, it would be something like that. Very, very, very literal. It would be, and the penultimate line. And the lion that gazes below, and the last line, batape aram, at a calm hill. At first, I had thought, okay, that the two last words are tape aram, okay, or a calm hill. In Farsi, okay, so this is just a calm hill, okay. I mean that calm or peaceful is the adjective for the word hill. If we read that line, the last line, separately from the other lines. But then Rebecca asked if this aram or this calm is an adjective for the hill, or it is an adverb for the lion's gazing. And then I noticed that, oh, this is a very important ambivalence here. Because in Farsi, if we read the two last lines, which constitutes the last sentence of this poem, you can read it also, and the lion that gazes calmly below at the hills. So it means that calm could be taken as an adverb and an adjective in Farsi. So, okay, this gives us a very important clue to the significance of enjambment here, because this ambivalence happens only through this enjambment. If we see the two lines in relation to each other, but without enjambment, the last line, independently and separately, okay, it has just one meaning. And now, as translators, we had to make the decision, okay, because we could not do that in both forms. And we chose the one that respected the enjambment. I mean, the one reading, I mean, the adverbial reading, which covered the whole sentence, the two lines, rather than the other reading, which just endorsed calm as an adjective. It was very instructive for me, this style. Yeah.
And so, and the consequence was that the aram, which is the last word in the poem, in the Persian.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I sometimes I think that if I have to return to this
aram meaning calm, right?
Yeah. Perhaps I prefer
you would change it
calmly in a separate line in the end, perhaps.
A separate line.
I know that it would be very strangely reading, you know, in English. I think that it would be something like that. The lion gazes at the hill below calmly. I think, yeah, I cannot say that. This is something that you can say. This is not very normal in English.
Right. I mean, but maybe the strangeness is good. I don't have it's published anyway, so try not to have any regrets. But
go for the next edition, perhaps.
Yes, exactly. But just this a very simple question I could ask everyone here. I mean, what about all this paratext stuff? Is it you have any opinion? I mean, yeah, is it? And I mean, I think we hope, Kayvan and I mean, that you know you don't really need to read the notes, and you can't. It's kind of up to you. I don't even remember. I mean, so it's this Ganj. Yeah, right. The Ganj Name. Can you say something? I mean, just, and then we can I just be interested to know, like, is there would there have been a better way of managing the complexity of these terms and references. So can you just say something about Ganjname, which is
okay, no.
Yeah, that was complicated.
Yeah, this is another challenge because
Inscription.
Yeah, here we translated it as inscription, which was more general, but in Farsi, it also refers to a map for a treasure, a map that tells you where a treasure or, for example, something like that is buried. So it is also Ganjname. So it has something to do with indication or pointing to the, something like, because the poem is very much related to death and the burial of the dead bodies, based on this objective correlative of Shirasangi or the stone lion. So this Ganjname is also has something to do with some kind of a burial, okay? But we could not do that, okay? Because as we just have it in our footnote, the word used here for inscription, Ganjname, letter for the treasury, literally indicates document that specifies the location of a hidden treasure. Taken as a proper name, Ganjname also refers to an ancient Iranian inscription praising Zoroastrian god Ahura Mazda. The Ganjname inscription is located near a famous stone lion that is also referenced in this poem. So yeah, when
the historical site.
Yeah, a constellation of very different ideas.
Right. And maybe this isn't such a good idea of doing it because it feels, there's all these, you begin to realize like everything you could have done, the different translations that it could have been. As I see this translation, we could have translated it map, right? Be my metaphor in this map in some ways, treasure map. So I don't know. So I guess we dealt with that, with some of those complexities with the notes, but I'm just the question of paratext.
Yeah, okay, because I love that. Okay, because I personally, in my approach to this poem, this specific poem, so I just think about inscription for me has some kind of associations with illegibility, unreadability, something that is hard to
frozen.
But for me, the experience of an English reader, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, the experience of an English reader was very important to me, okay, because without all of these paratexts, without all of these notes, I think that if I had not told the English reader that, okay, tombstone is a sign of death, so you would read it on the surface, which is very nice. When you read it, just stone lion, okay, very poetic, more poetic than just reducing it to some kind of symbol of death or something like that. So it creates another meaning, just like reading an inscription, reading an illegible inscription. That just makes you on the letters and these things. Yeah, I love that experience. Inscription, yeah.
So so now I'm curious if anyone has an impression about sort of the usefulness of the image itself, or the note. Just a very small relevant digression, I hope. So this question of images and visual representation in poetry translation, and whether images can successfully convey the multiplicity of meanings of a poetic reference. So we're now working on this anthology of something part of my research, but Kayvan and I are doing this together, this anthology of prison poetry in Persian. And there's this real challenge of the word, Kayvan, I hope you can go into this, nay, which is, here, this is kind of a big, and I'm sure in your own languages, you'll have these challenges. I'll explain what that means in a second. But like where there's this really foundational pun or foundational double meaning that a word has. And to try to bring that out in the language just results in some very, it's hard to do in poetry because you really have to turn to analysis. So sometimes images can do the trick. Now, now Kayvan will explain what I'm talking about by this nay, and we've been debating whether we could go to a visual image to resolve it. So can you explain what nay means in the context of prison poetry?
You mean qalay nay?
I'm sorry, night. Yeah. The fortress. So it's the fortress of the
Yeah,
first
it is
prison
also
poet,
the fortress in which Masud Asad Salman, who
which is
was the
a prison
inaugurator of
poet.
the genre
Right. So it's the
of
name of
prison
a prison.
poetry, he was in prison there, and it is also means just saying no simply in Farsi. It is also nai in some way, and also it is just it refers to in some ways to pen to read.
A pen, something that you write with.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which very poetic paraphernalia.
Right.
And,
Oh, go ahead.
and also there is also the reed. I mean, as Rumi has used in his Masnavi,
Like a flute.
flute, which is just about singing or these things. So, and he plays with all of these senses in his Qasida when he
Poem.
talks about his
Right.
prison. Yeah.
So just the reason I was going into that is because, so here's a word that is like one of the most commonly occurring words in this genre. And it has 4 completely separate meanings. You know, each time it is used, those 4 meanings are activated. So like, how do you, in a poetic context, it's almost impossible to kind of convey that. And I don't know, I mean, I'm sure your language Persian is really excessive in this way of like multiple meanings, but yeah, we were thinking of like commissioning someone to sort of a poet in prison with playing the flute. I don't know. But anyway, that's just one example. So anything more to say about this poem?
No, there is no rhyme.
Right. I wonder if that there's a it'd be harder to imagine a rhyme with such a short poem with such short lines. I think it would be very difficult to, anyway, just a thought. Yeah. Okay, so Kayvan, what is your introductory?
Yeah, this poem is also perhaps this is a summary of Elahi's aesthetics, or it is a summary of one of Elahi's many aesthetics, okay, because he's very experimental with the styles in Persian poetry. So just from a simple act of cutting an onion, he just tries to make not only a poem, but also some kind of allegory of the way he creates poetry and how he thinks about poetry, of how he thinks about, for example, the sense of the poetry, which is not there at all, but is discovered through just discovering the relations between these ideas in a poem. To, for example, the end of the poem when he talks about it is the high tide of the eyes, which refers to the culmination of the poem when the communication, I mean, it has touched your heart, you know what I say. This is for Elahi. This is the end of a poem. It should touch your heart, and that is why it should affect you and bring tears to your eyes in that sense. When he says that a high tide of the eyes, it refers to, but this is cutting the onion, which bursts you in tears, and it is also a piece of poem that touches your heart and then you makes you cry, perhaps. Okay, so this happens to this applies to exactly. I think this is the best word for that, touching the heart, as for example what Derrida says about poetry, and I love it. I love to repeat it because he says when Derrida wants to talk about what he thinks is poetry, he says that poetry is something that is memorized and which is written on the back of your heart. So it means that, so it is very, you know, it is not a definition, of course. There is no analytical aspect in it, but yeah, I love it. It works a lot with Persian poetry.
Mm-hmm. What when you're talking, one thing I realized or thought about is this, if it's about touching the heart, the thing about when crying when you are peeling an onion is that, and we could have called it peeling rather than dissecting, right? Or is dissecting
Yeah.
better? So one thing is that it's
because
artificial.
the word tashri, it is not just peeling. Okay, tashri is used in a just surgery context.
Right.
It is also dissecting and also explication, which explication, I mean, etymologically has something to
commentary.
Ex and plea. I mean, just to remove the please of something. Yeah.
But yeah, so if poetry is about touching the heart, but when someone cries and they're peeling an onion, these are not real tears. So right, so there's also the sense of poetry as an art that's eliciting things that aren't necessarily real, as well as touching a heart. So there's an authenticity, but also some kind of inventive, even artificial in a good sense, dimension to the poem.
Yeah, exactly. We were trying to preserve this. I mean, there is something in this poem that makes it into an extended implied simile. You know, just the implied simile is that the poem or poetry or this poem is just like this onion, which is being dissected or something like that.
And one thing I thought, to tie this to the conversation last week about I think that was last week, about translating images versus abstract ideas. I don't know what you felt, Kayvan, but I thought this, in some ways, this was an easy poem to translate because it's oriented around an image. And so there was a sense of just going with this onion and staying with the way it even though that at the same time, this is obviously, there's a lot of philosophical points being made, but because he does that through very concrete things, very specific objects, it made it translatable in a sense. Whereas if it had just, you could imagine a poem that was kind of about the complexity of poetry and so forth, but didn't have the onion at the center, that would be very hard to perhaps impossible to translate effectively. So yeah, that's just goes back to my thought about the images are really kind of a gift when it comes to poetry translation. I would kind of begin there as a translator. I mean, if you're dealing with a poem that's just really resisting you, doesn't seem to yield in English, just go begin with the image and see how that takes you in terms of translating the rest of it. But yeah, what about enjambment, line breaks, Kayvan? Any thoughts about how that was done?
I think the best, yeah. Well, it is because of a very big difference between English and Persian in this. Okay, in about report to the speech. Okay, so in English you can say, for example, you can report the speech something like this. For example, you say, "I went to school," John said. And you can also say, "John said, I went to school." In Persian, the second option is the only available option. Okay, so we can say that John said, "I went to school." We don't have an option like "I went to school," John said. Okay, but Elahi has used that here. Elahi has used that here. So he quotes the first, he quotes what is said, and then he identifies the speaker. And he does it across the lines. So the Persian reader reads that without understanding that who is saying that. And this ambiguity was something intentional, I think, in Farsi. That is why I said that I think that kind of the ambiguity, if we want to create it, okay, perhaps it was not feasible at all, just in English.
Wow, we have to write an article about that. Yeah, it's interesting. Any other questions or points? I guess we also need to end really soon, as in like now, but happy if any last questions about the poem or the translation, or general questions to Kayvan. just noticed, by the way, like, I mean, how good his English is. And he was only, sorry, I just have to say that. Yeah, it's passed all his life in Iran. Only recently came to the UK. So that English comes from never having had contact with English speakers.
She's given me confidence, of course.
Sorry. Anyway, I hope that's useful. I mean, maybe also it will inspire you to consider like partnering, or if you haven't done that already, because a lot of the possibilities of what you're translating can really be come to life, you know, when you're working with someone else. So really encourage that. Great. Okay, so I think I don't want to take up too much time from the other poems we're going to be discussing of people here. So thank you so much, Kayvan. I think you can say goodnight if you wish.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.